Hello there, welcome back to Zero Production Value Movie Reviews. As always, I am Eric Hoernke, and today I'm going to be discussing the 2019 film The Souvenir by Joanna Hogg, directed by Joanna Hogg. Probably not a movie many of you have seen. Wasn't really on my radar. This is part of my attempt in my amateur critic's head to watch all the relevant films that would be considered the best films of 2019 so I can make an informed top 10 list, essentially. So how does one decide what the relevant films are, you may ask? Well, I found a handy little tool. Metacritic does a compilation of all critics' top 10 lists that they can pretty much get their hands on, and then based on whether a film is on those lists and how high they are on the lists, it basically gives a film a number. The higher the number, the more number ones and the more lists it's been on. And this was actually rather high. This came in at number 11, and after watching it, I have no idea why, which is why I question whether or not I'm a real critic. But then again, I'm just a guy on the internet who likes to talk about movies. So, what can you do? Like I said, this is a drama from writer-director Hogg. It might be Hogg. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it looks like Hogg. It's H-O-G-G. Who I'm unfamiliar with, I think mainly because she's a British writer-director and relatively new, but also she makes films in England about films in England for people in England. So it's doesn't really get to American audiences very much. This stars Honor Swinton Byrne, who is the daughter of Tilda. Doesn't look anything like her though. You would have had to tell me. I wouldn't just guess that. She plays Julie in this film, and just basically a normal 20-something girl. It's semi-autobiographical, based in part on Hogg's time at film school. It's set in the English town of Sunderland in the early 80s, I believe maybe even in 1980. The plot here is fairly benign. We just follow Julie as she learns her trade at film school. She has in her mind a film that she wants to do, and you hear her describe that a few times. We see her interact with her parents and try to pursue a social life while going to school. And while film school is her primary purpose and she seems very focused, the film shifts focus to her personal life as she becomes enamored and begins a relationship with the mysterious Anthony, who she meets at a friend's party. Just a bunch of people gathered and they get to talking, and eventually one thing leads to another, and they're in a relationship. And he supposedly works for the Foreign Office, which I probably should look that up. I think it's something like maybe like the CIA, Foreign Office in England. So pretty quickly we learned that this is going to be a destructive relationship, as Anthony is a habitual heroin user. And the crux of the narrative is going to be his heroin use, his on it and off it, and the effect that it's going to have on their relationship. I found this story to be pretty tedious and bland. Julie is extremely naive about this dude Anthony's drug use, which doesn't really make any sense to me. Like, she sees the track marks on his arms, and she's like, "Oh, did you hurt yourself?" And I'm like, what are you, 10? I mean, who doesn't know what track marks on an arm look like? Maybe I'm giving 1980 too much credit, and we're a lot more advanced now that we're 20 years on in 2020. But I think you would see needle marks in somebody's arm and have an understanding as a 20-something what that meant. It's hard to really gauge the passage of time. Like I said, like I gave the example of the drug use, and then it seems like almost the next scene she's like, "Oh, did you score today?" And he's all like, "No, baby, I didn't score." And I'm like, okay, that was a weird time jump, but so with no seemingly transitional, it just goes along. So really, from start to finish on this relationship, I have no idea. It could have lasted 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years, for all I know. The way they set this thing up. Also, the relationship as abusive, like it's an abusive relationship. He takes advantage of her, so it is very much abusive, but it seems kind of abusive light. And I don't want to downplay if somebody's trying to put emotions out there on film based on an abusive relationship they may have had. I don't want to downplay that, but it just never really seemed to resonate emotionally. Like he's not mentally abusive, he's not physically abusive. It's just basically the toll his drug use and what it does to him and what it makes him do. Basically, steal from her is kind of maybe the worst thing that he sort of does, other than hurt himself through drug use. But it just never seemed to go for hard emotions. It never dug in, and maybe that's partially the austerity of how Brits are, and they're kind of, they kind of keep their emotions on the surface, and they don't get so into it and method and crazy like American actors do. But it just felt all superficial, and even when tragedy occurs, you just don't really feel it as strongly as I think you should. So all that being said, she is a very interesting director, how she frames her shots. She did this where they're almost like, I don't really want to say symmetrical because they're not symmetrical, but they're like balanced shots, in the frame where two people at a table and it's directly in the center of the shot and two people on thing. I mean, it's like balanced so that it evokes symmetry. So it was a really interesting way to frame some. I mean, it's not done throughout, but she has a very specific way of framing shots that's noticeable, and I thought noticeable in a good way. So I think with the right material, I think she could do some very good things. While intimate, I just thought this film was basically inconsequential. It just didn't do anything for me. And I know it was a personal film to her, but it really just couldn't hold my attention. So I honestly don't even think this is a very good movie, much less one of the best movies of the year. So for all of that, I'm going to give The Souvenir, directed by Joanna Hogg, a D+. I love you. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching my movie review. I enjoyed making it. Like, subscribe, leave some comments if you would. As always, I'm Eric Hoernke. That rhymes with turnkey, and this has been a production of Zero Value. Thanks for watching.